All right, everyone. I think we are live for our very first webinar here at Phoenix Bikes. I'm Emily Gage, the Executive Director of Phoenix Bikes, and I have with me Raymond Duran, who leads our youth and community programming, and Linda, Diane, and Anne, who are going to be our guest speakers today, and we're really excited to share more about them in a minute. And then Bill from the League of American Bicyclists. And I just wanted to intro the program and welcome you all. We're really excited to start this. For those of you who might be new to Phoenix Bikes, we are a community nonprofit bike shop in Arlington, Virginia. And we have a mission to educate youth, promote bicycling, and build community. And so normally we're doing that in our bike shop with a lot of teens and youth and customers gathering, and obviously during this period of social distancing we cannot do that, and so we have switched to offering some of our educational programming online, and this is actually our very first week that we are launching. So welcome to being the guinea pigs, but we're excited to be doing this. We really enjoy having the chance to teach cycling and teach bike mechanics and all things two wheels, and so we're excited to kind of test out what it's like to do that virtually. So before we get into today's programming, which I'm really excited about, I wanted to go ahead and introduce Bill from the League of American Bicyclists. The League actually has a fun connection to the story that you're about to hear today, and he'll give a little teaser on that. But the League has been very generous in being our tech sponsors for this today, and basically being the hosts. All the technology that sort of you're experiencing today for the webinar is all thanks to the League. So I will turn it over to you, Bill, to share a little bit about yourself, the League, and then kind of introduce people to how this will work from a technology standpoint.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Emily, and huge thanks to our presenters, to Phoenix Bikes for organizing all of this, and to all of you for participating today. As Emily said, I'm Bill Nesper. I'm the Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists. So for those of you who don't know, the League since 1880 has been the national organization promoting bicycling and working to make bicycling safe and comfortable and accessible to all. And so we're here in Washington, D.C. I'm actually in Arlington and a big supporter of Phoenix Bikes. You know, we're such big fans at the League of everything Phoenix is doing. So thank you all for inviting us to help use our technology and make this happen today. We're in DC, and we work at the national, state, and local levels with a network of more than 1,000 organizations around the country and 200,000 advocates, educators, and local leaders trying to work together to create a truly bicycle-friendly America for everyone. So that's our mission, and so happy to be a part of this and to be a part of this story in some way today. So we are recording this session, and we'll make it available afterwards. Right now, only the presenters are shown on camera, so all of the other cameras are not showing. And all of you attendees, your mics are being muted right now. We are really looking forward to an engaging session and making sure that we're getting your questions to be part of this. So please use the questions box on your screen to ask your questions. During the Q&A time, Raymond will call on you and ask you, give you a chance to ask your question. He'll unmute you and ask your question directly. We also have a few polls, so we want to test one of these polls right now, just so you have a couple of them right now. So we thought we'd have a little fun poll at the very beginning. So I'm going to launch this. How do you think? Let's see if this works. Here we go. So the question is, how do you think the League of American Bicyclists was involved in the story you're about to hear? So please, on your screen, you go ahead and attendees, please. Answer those questions, Ken, real time here, and then we'll share the results. We'll give you about 10 seconds. Awesome. We have, looks like a lot of participation. 75% of people have voted, and I'm going to share those results with you really quickly. Here we go. So, did loan the bikes for the trip, taught basic repairs, organized a similar trip in 1972 that inspired Anne to do it, helped Anne plan the route for the trip, or fundraised and financially supported the trip? And the correct answer is?
Anne, do you want to share the correct answer?
They helped me to plan the route for the trip.
Awesome. So only 38% got that right, but you'll learn more during this webinar about all of the logistics that went into the trip.
Awesome. So thanks for doing that. And thanks again. I'm going to hand it back over to Linda to share your screen and Emily to take away the opening.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, so Bill, just as Bill mentioned, we're going to take the first portion of the program really until 2:30 for Linda and Diane and Anne to share their story. And then starting at 2:30, we really want to allow the last half of the program for questions because this is such a fun story. And you all are going to have a lot of questions about the story and then even maybe about bike camping yourself. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Anne and Linda and Diane. So Anne, as you probably got from the little summary of the program that we sent out today, is the one who organized this amazing trip in 1973. She is joining by audio today. So you heard her earlier. You won't see her on the screen, but she's very much with us. And then her two daughters, Linda, who is an Arlington, Virginia resident. So for those of you joining on this coast, she's close to us. And her sister, Diane, who's also from the Seattle area where her mom, Anne, is, are also joining on the line. And I will go ahead and turn it over. Linda, if you want to take the ball and roll from here, we're looking forward to this.
Great, thank you, Emily. Can you see my screen or do I need to share?
We can see it.
You can see.
Great. Okay, it's great to be here. Thank you, Emily, Bill, Raymond, and it's quite an honor. I'm in Arlington, as Emily said, and I was talking with her about Phoenix Bikes. I love Phoenix Bikes. I've been there. It's an amazing program. And said, oh, by the way, are you interested in this trip that we took a long time ago? So that's how we connected. And as an adult, I'm extremely proud of my mother, Ann Staheli, who led 20 teenagers by herself on a trip from Canada to Mexico in 1973. And we traveled 1,800 miles, averaging 40 miles a day for something like 40 days. And there were 20 of us teens. I was 13, and my sister Diane, who's on the show here, the call, was the youngest teen at age 12. So we're here to share our presentation, and then, as Emily said, we'll answer questions and have a discussion. So Mom and Diane, I want you to chime in here. I'm going to try to go sort of slowly here and encourage you to throw in your thoughts as we go. This is our logo that my mom, I assume Mom created this.
Yes.
Created everything that had to do with the Cycleteens. And this was on our sweatshirt and also on our windbreakers. And this is the route we took. Mom, do you want to describe it, or do you want me to?
The route was theoretically down the coast. So it was Highway 1, and we went from Seattle by our parents' cars up to the northern Canadian border. And that was great. We said our goodbyes under the Peace Arch, and I think we have a picture of that at the very end. From there, we crossed over by ferry to Vancouver Island and came down, and we actually started our trip on the Olympic Peninsula and then routed around and down the coast on Highway 1, except through parts of Oregon where it was inaccessible on the coast, and we had permission to ride on the shoulder of the freeway. I don't know if you remember that, Linda and Diane. And then the rest of the way was down Route 1, all the way down to San Diego. All along the route, people said, we can't believe you're doing this, riding your bikes from Canada to Mexico. When we got to San Diego, a few people said, are you going to bicycle all the way back now? We couldn't believe they would say that. We were ready to get on that airplane. United boxed up our bikes and flew us home, no extra charge. That would not be the case today. Enough on the route. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Mom.
And Linda,
yes.
before we go on, actually, I thought it might be fun to do another poll question. We have a number of youth on the line, and we have also some community members. And I just thought it was amazing hearing the distance that you guys traveled. And you shared in the beginning, you would do about 40 miles a day. So I thought it might be fun to ask all of you who are on the line, what is the longest you have ever ridden in a single day? So let me see if I can launch this poll question and take over the screen for a second. So I know we at least have some youth on the line who have ridden a century before. So I'm hoping there are some of them who are going to answer. Looks like people, about 30% have voted. Hopefully you can see that. So it says, what is the longest you've ever ridden in a single day? Under 20 miles, 20 to 49 miles, 50 to 99 miles, or 100 miles or more. We'll see what kind of avid cyclists we have here. We'll give it another 5 seconds just to let any last participants vote.
While they're doing that, I can mention that we did have on a couple different days almost 80 miles. And that was because we needed to make time to get past certain obstacles and get down the route.
Sure. Okay, so it looks like we have 86% of people. So I will close the poll and show you the outcome of the poll. Okay, so 33% of the people who are on the line have biked under 20 miles as their longest ride in a single day. We have 25% who said it's between the 20 and 49 mile mark. A good chunk, 25%, another quarter who have done 50 to 99 miles. And then 17% of you have done 100 miles or more. So that's amazing. Okay, so I will give it back to you. If you want to go back into presentation mode, Linda, the screen is yours.
Okay, let's see if I can do this smoothly. Can you see this?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. Oops, something happened. Can you see my screen?
We can see the screen, but it's not in play mode. So it's not taking up the full screen if you want to push play again. Yep, that's it. Perfect.
Okay, thanks. Okay, my mom, Ann Staheli, this is Mom at the beginning of the trip. Mom, I want you to just tell how you got permission from the parents briefly.
This is a riot because in 1973, we met together with the parents. I told them a little bit about what we were going to do, and I said, we need your written permission to do that. And they, up at the top, it simply says, we give permission for our child to join Anne on this trip from Canada to Mexico. Signed their names, and I don't know if it was addresses or whatever else, but that was it. Today, you'd have legal issues, you'd have insurance, you'd have all sorts of other things that probably would be essential.
Yes, so that was how that started. And then Mom organized a very serious training session that was written up in, I think, our Seattle paper here on all the things that we were doing to prepare. And this is a great article. We can share our slides with you later. But this is a great article going into detail on the training. And here's a photo from the Seattle Times, on the front page of the Seattle Times, of us practicing putting up our tents across the street from our house in the playground. Diane or Mom?
Well, that was really funny because we laughed when we saw this cute picture. But you got very proficient at that very soon, and we ended up having to do that every single day for 6 weeks, and you were good at it.
Yeah, and one of the things, I didn't really know how to ride a bike before I started this trip. I was 13 and Diane was 12, and I think we just started learning to ride we had Peugeots. We had very nice road bikes, but we were pretty much brand new on the bicycling front when we started this bike trip.
Can I make one comment about how I decided to do the trip?
Yes.
I had said that we were going to do a bicycle trip, and my husband came home one day and he said, you know, I'm getting asked about this trip. Are you really going to do this, or this could be embarrassing for me? And that was a really wise comment that he made. And I said, well, I think so. And I went out and dusted off my bike and took it out and rode it up through Seattle about 6 to 8 blocks, was able to turn around and come back without falling off. And I said, sure, we can do this. And that was it.
Yep. And as you can see, we didn't wear helmets because this was before the days of helmets, 1973. We had these flags that we had on the back of our bikes to help with visibility so people would see us. And we each carried our own gear. So we carried everything in these pannier bags on the back of our bikes, our sleeping bags, our tents, our food, our clothes, everything. And Mom trained us very well beforehand on bike mechanics and budgeting. We were all responsible for our own budgets.
On foods and nutrition and buying groceries, you ended up being really professionals at all of that.
I would say, oh, Linda? Yeah, I would say that a lot of it we learned in the first few weeks on the road. I mean, I don't know how many miles we rode in one day before we started this trip, but the first week was quite grueling. And you know, it was really learn as you go on this trip, I thought.
Yeah, it really was. There's no doubt.
And there's Diane on the left in this picture. So my mom is in the front leading here on the right, and Diane is on the left. And this is going through some small town. And of course, we had many big hills we had to go up. I think the biggest hills I remember were in southern Washington State, going into the redwoods. I don't know, Diane and Mom.
Yeah, you had some big hills going from Oregon down into Northern California. And then we were able to go down the hill to the ocean. And that was a lot of fun.
And we had relatives of some of our teens came and saw us on this may have been at the beginning of the trip or maybe down in Oregon, I don't remember. But we did have a few relatives just come and say hello. And we stayed in these, Mom had planned the trip in advance. This is of course way before internet. So she had planned the trip way in advance, and every day she had planned where we were going to stay. So we stayed in campgrounds most of the time, pitching our tents. But sometimes we would stay in a church or a 4-H building place. Is that right, Mom?
Actually, we visited this place, but we didn't stay in it. But you're right. It was pretty casual.
We were tired, and so we would just go to the top of a hill and lay down and sleep.
Well, we'd stop when somebody's bike needed work. And instead of being social and chit-chatting, everybody crashed, except the couple kids working on the bikes.
And you want to talk about the bike mechanics? You had a couple guys that were the designated bike mechanics. They were like the older kids, 15 and 16.
Can you hear me? Because I've lost you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. We had a couple of fellows that saved the day for me. I thought I was going to have to be supervising all the mechanical problems. And these boys worked in bike shops prior to the trip to get ready to go. And it was fabulous. They did all the work and really were great. We asked everybody to put thorn-proof tubes in their bike and get rid of the racing tire tubes. And there were a couple of kids who said, oh, these are new racing tubes. I don't want to take them out. So it took us 2 to 3 days, and it was coming down through Vancouver Island when we were having flat tires. And as soon as each one of those tires went flat in the first few days, because you're riding on the shoulder with glass and sharp rocks and all sorts of incremental things. And we went to the thorn-proof tubes for everyone, and then we had very few, if any, flat tires for the rest of the trip. Places where we stopped to repair bikes were usually derailleur problems or sometimes needing to true up a wheel a little bit.
So we had mostly touring bikes, road bikes. We didn't have like mountain bikes. Everybody had pretty high quality bikes.
They were all 10 speeds, if I can say that. That was required so that
Yeah.
we could pace ourselves together.
And this was before they had 15 speeds, 18 speeds, 21 speeds. So I think we all had 10 speeds. This is a campground where we were getting our stuff out ready to pitch our tents. Another side of the road photo. Diane is right here in the front writing a letter or doing something. Mom's eating. This is Avenue of the Giants, the redwood forest down in Northern California. Mom, you organized a lot of tours of factories. I think this was the Bumblebee factory.
Yes, we also went through Tillamook Cheese Factory. So the Bumblebee tuna and the cheese were the main things, and those were both in Oregon.
This is Carol Caddy, who had a bike accident.
She was able to get that wheel trued up, or she got a replacement. I don't remember.
This is Mom, Diane, and I. We had a lot of news clippings all the way down the coast in papers. And I think this was a photo taken by a paper that was in one of the art papers, I think. And this was also a picture taken that was on the front page, I think, Mom, of the San Francisco Examiner. This is the Golden
San Francisco Chronicle, and it was the front page of the society section, which handled all sorts of things in those days. But that was a 2-page spread in the newspaper of San Francisco. Yeah. This is the visitor spot on the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge.
And when we came to San Francisco, we visited with my mom's mother and sister, or Diane and my grandmother and aunt here. So this is.
They actually drove to the bridge to meet us, and they brought the editor from that section of the San Francisco Chronicle with her. So that was a good trip.
And we saw Godspell in San Francisco. This was, I think, the San Francisco Stock Exchange, I think. I don't remember.
Yes.
Sightseeing. This is a church that we stayed at. I don't know where.
That was in San Francisco. We stayed out at the Presbyterian Church. That was one of the only churches that one of 2 churches that we stayed in on the trip. But in San Francisco, we were able to take a hard hat tour of the Hyatt Regency that was being built in San Francisco on Market Street down by the wharf. And nobody else had been allowed in there, and they put us in hard hats and toured us through there. And it was really a pretty big deal, although the kids didn't realize it at the time, I don't think.
So it's 2:23. I'm going to go through the next few pictures kind of quickly, and then Diane and Mom, you can add your thoughts.
Yeah.
I think people would be interested in knowing our budget, how much money and how the kids manage their money. It was $3.50 a day. We would go in as teams, like 50 cents for breakfast, $1 for lunch, $1 for dinner, I think 50 cents for snacks and 50 cents for the campground. And we would pool our money. And then Mom had a system so that if we didn't follow her rules, we had to pay money into a hotel fund. But we managed all the money ourselves, and we pooled our money. Like for breakfast, we'd go 5 of us into the grocery store, get a box of milk, a box of cereal, and split it, and that would be our breakfast. This is some of the press. I think Mom got the key to Culver City down by LA somewhere and opened up a trail. This is just sitting. I don't know. This is down by LA, going to Universal Studios and Disney World, and this might be in San Diego, I think, with the San Diego Zoo and the aquarium. So these are just a few of the shots that we have. We have scrapbooks that Mom had us write every night in our scrapbooks so that when we got back, we all created scrapbooks. We had some pretty amazing places we slept, as you can see here. I don't know where this was, Mom. Do you remember?
That's just typical of wherever we were. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, it was
Nothing fancy.
survival. And then we made it to Tijuana, I think 1,800 miles, 40 days later, crossed the border and turned around, rode back to San Diego and hopped in a plane, flew home. And then we were awarded this proclamation by the King County Executive Spellman that proclaimed, what is it? We proclaimed August 3rd, 1973, Seattle Cycleteens Day.
Yeah, it was, whereas, and then they went through a lot of details, whereas all the things about our trip, we call on Seattle to honor this group. Yeah. I mentioned that we had a 50-piece military brass band meeting us at the airport gate. Not possible in this day and age, but they were able to get out to the gate then.
Yeah, it was quite a welcome home ceremony that, yeah, there's a lot of things we could share about this trip. We would love to answer your questions, but I wanted to ask you, Diane, to share any reflections you had as the youngest member of this trip. And then I also wanted to share that 40 years later, we had a reunion, and I'll go through that really quick. And then Diane, maybe you and Mom can wrap up. We met 40 years later in 2013 with some of the members of the trip. And turns out Mom's granddaughter had a teacher named Heidi who was one of our Seattle Cycleteens. And so that was a small coincidence. We had a reunion, and this is Mother 40 years later in 2013. And we brought all these Seattle Cycleteens together with their families. And we actually had, as part of our reunion, a bike trip. And then we got together and had a party. So this is all of us at Diane's house on her steps. And you can see my mom in the middle with myself and Diane next to her. But these are all the Seattle Cycleteens. There's 17 out of the 20 that came from all over the United States. And so Diane, do you want to share any reflections as the youngest member of this trip?
Yeah, just a few. So, you know, it was not an easy trip, and it wasn't something that I was particularly interested in. It was really something that my mom and Linda were a lot more enthusiastic. You know, I was at an age where I really didn't want to leave home. I had my friends, and so I was kind of swept along in all of it. And it was particularly hard in the beginning. You know, I was tall, but I think I don't think I was physically as developed, and definitely not emotionally all there, you know, as enthusiastic as everyone else. But you know, I think once we hit California, it was so much easier. We had to go over the mountain passes, and we had to really acclimate to the biking every day, and you know, I just have to say that by the end, there was such a sense of accomplishment that came out of that for me. And it wasn't like I really was excited to jump on a bike again afterwards. That wasn't really it so much, but it made me feel like I could do anything. You know, once you camp that many days and you live out of basically a backpack, which was more or less a pannier bag, and you live on a budget and you're really quite self-sufficient. We could take our bikes apart and put them back together again. We could change our own tires, even though we had the fellows that really were great in helping us. But you know, I would say it really helped me in terms of my self-esteem. I later climbed Mount Rainier. That was something I decided to do, and it was, I think, related just the feeling like, oh, well, if I work hard enough, I know I can do it. I traveled by myself in Australia and New Zealand. I don't think I would have done that otherwise. So, you know, there's a lot that just comes out of it that you don't expect.
And during the reunion, we talked about all of these how the trip impacted us when we were 12 to 16. So all of you out there that have had these amazing experiences biking and going long distances, it really does shape you over time. So Mom, do you have any final words? Because I think we're coming up on our 30 minutes.
We are. All I can say is I was so proud of every single one of the kids. They just did a fantastic job. And Diane's comments are right on. She really did feel hesitant to begin with, but she wasn't the only one. She probably was, but there were at least 3 or 4 of some of the girls that were not quite up to speed physically. So it was a hard start. And all of us really felt those muscles start to get sore the first few days. I've gotten some fabulous comments after the 40th reunion about how it's changed people's lives and really opened the door for them in terms of their feeling like they had the can-do, I can do it ability. So thanks, kids. It was a great experience for me too.
Well, and to have you as an adult lead 20 kids was just amazing. So that's our presentation, Emily and Raymond and Bill, and we're excited to get questions and to have a conversation with all of you.
Thank you guys so much. That's so much fun. It's so much fun.
And here's the Facebook page, by the way. I wanted to plug that any of you on watching can go to Seattle Cycleteens Facebook, and you can read through and look at the articles and get in touch with us anytime. And we can leave you our emails and whatever. So thanks. Should I take us off? Should I stop?
Raymond? Yeah, Linda, if you want to stop sharing your screen, then we can see you larger on the screen. Okay, well, I will turn it over to Raymond to explain how you all can submit your questions. And then, so why don't I do that? And that way people can start asking questions and then we can take them one by one.
Yeah, definitely. So I think on the right-hand side of the screen for people, there's a question box. You can submit questions to us. And I'll let people load those questions up. And while we wait for those, I guess I'll start with one off the bat. And this one's for Linda and Diane. Like, at that age, how did it feel to like reach the finish line? Like, knowing that you did not have to wake up and do another 45 miles.
Huge relief.
Us going into the Tijuana, oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, I think the hard part was we had to ride our bikes from Tijuana back to San Diego. It was 20 miles or something, but backtrack to get to the airplane. But yeah, it was such a huge accomplishment. And, you know, I mean, I don't know, Diane, all the things that we dreamt about. I think we'll have to look at our diaries, but, you know, we had these huge thoughts, you know, from the muscles. Do you remember? Well, I'll speak for myself. And bizarre tan lines, you know, bike tan lines. You know, I think, you know, the trip really shaped us in ways mentally, physically, that were, you know, it was just such an intense experience that I think I was looking forward to getting back to some sense of normalcy.
It looks like we have questions coming in. I did want to ask one before we get to those. I can't remember if you mentioned this, Linda, as you started, but what was the breakdown between boys and girls on the trip?
Diane, do you remember? It was 8 boys, 12 girls.
So I found that fascinating that there were so many girls in the pictures, which what a great experience to make it open both for boys and girls. I love that.
And there were a number of sibling groups. We had at least 4 siblings.
Cousin.
Yeah. The thing that was also amazing to me was that these kids came from all over Seattle. They weren't from families who knew us ahead of time. The radio station in Seattle picked up the story and broadcast it, and I got calls and kids from all over Greater Seattle that said, we want to try out. And I was going to take 7 people. And we went through the tryouts, and we went through the training, and I told them we'll decide at the end. And at the end of 3 months practicing together and learning things together, I thought, well, heck, we did it this far, let's go the rest of the way. And we decided to take everybody.
And Mom, I think when I read through the article, it looks like you started your planning like in February or March, and we left it. I mean, that's crazy that you would.
I think that's a perfect segue to the first question, and I think you answered some of it already. How did you select which kids would go? Did you have to turn any kids away? And then did everyone know each other? And you answered most of it, but I think if you had to turn some away, did you just tell them that they just weren't ready for this ride, or did you have to turn anyone away?
Do you know, that's a really good point, because there was one youngster who wanted to go very badly, and I knew that she had some learning issues, and I was concerned about this. In fact, I wasn't sure what the diagnosis of her condition was at all, or whether it was serious, but I found out on the trip that she did have a diagnosis for learning disability. And she managed just fine on the trip. And at the 40th reunion, the stories she told, do you remember, girls? It's hard for me to not be emotional about it, but she had overcome an abusive husband, managed to pull her life back together with her children, and gotten them all out of a burning house. She was phenomenal, and she had a spirit that I was so proud of. And I think that every one of the kids that rode had that I can do it attitude afterwards.
The Mom took everybody.
Yep.
Everybody that applied, she took.
Yeah. We have another one here. Sorry for everyone viewing. It's our first time using the platform, so I'm still getting used to how to see who's asking the questions. I think this one's from Emerson. What advice would you give to teens who want to take this trip in 2020?
Being the trip from Canada to Mexico, do you suppose?
Yes.
The comment I would make, Emerson, is that it would be much harder to do that today than it was in 1973. I would, first of all, have to get all sorts of legal clearance to do it for anybody that went with me. And we would be vulnerable for all of the petty theft and larceny minded folks that are out in the world today. That wasn't a big issue. One of the biggest challenges we had was we got up at 4:30 in the morning and on the road by 5 because of the logging trucks. They were our biggest challenge when we were in Washington and Oregon. And we had to try to get up there early enough to beat them. And then we battled them for a few hours and we were off the road by 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
If I can comment on that too, I personally would love to see more of these kind of trips these days. And yes, there would be legal issues for any adult taking a group of teens that they'd have to iron out, but I think they're doable. You'd have to probably, you know, that's a whole conversation you could have a whole webinar on, right? On how to design something in this day and age. But there are things that make it easier now than it was when Mom did it, because we have phones, we have internet, you know, they're planning for it, emergency. She had to go to like find a cell phone to make an emergency call in the middle of the night.
Find a payphone, yeah.
Payphone, not a cell phone. Forgot about payphones. So, but I would love, I actually have a friend who rode across the country last year from San Francisco to New York, And I know people do this individually and in small groups. And he would love to come in and talk about his trip. He's 21 and he is writing a book about it, Emily. Pablo, who I introduced you to. But anyways, we could talk later, but it's a really good question. And I'd love to see some people organize along these lines. They could consult with Mom.
Yes.
Definitely.
Diane,
And
do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I was just going to say, Raymond, I don't know if you want to explain if anybody is interested in just sort of taking a taste of bike camping, maybe explaining what Phoenix has offered once social distancing is over, what will resume.
So at Phoenix, we provide 2 different camping trips / touring trips throughout the year. Our first trip is very beginner friendly, where you can decide whether or not you want to carry all your stuff, and we'll ride out to Marsden Track is usually the first place we like to pick, and then we come back and it's just one overnight. Then we do a second trip that is usually 3 or 4 nights camping, and we carry everything on our back, and that changes year to year what location we go to. But definitely keep your eyes out once social distancing is lifted and we're all comfortable getting back on the road. We'll definitely have one of those camping trips this year. With that, I'm gonna move on to the next question because I don't want to cut anyone's questions. We have our next question is from Paola. What did you do when there were rainy days? What was the rainy day plan?
Well, we had a motel fund, quote, and kids that were not good at tying everything tightly on their bikes and would drop things were told they would lose 25 cents for everything dropped each time. So everybody was really good at packing their bikes, and we never collected a cent on that. But I did put us in a motel one night on the Olympic Peninsula because it was pouring. And we had 3 different rooms. And the only rule was I said, I get one of the beds.
3 rooms for 20 people. All the
Yep.
boys in one room. All 8 of them.
Yeah.
Diane, do you remember that night?
It was heaven.
I remember it well, yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go on to the next one. The next question's from one of our lovely coworkers, mechanics in the shop. Evelyn asked, what sparked the reason for the trip?
That's a good question, Evelyn. As a child, my parents had taken me on a lot of wonderful trips, and I'd come home and try to share my fun educational experiences and awesome experiences with my girlfriend, and she would always say, oh, Anne, you should have been with me at Camp Richardson at Lake Tahoe, where she went every year. And one year I went up to see Camp Richardson, and I thought, that's sad, really. What I wanted as an adult was to be able to take my kids on a trip with a friend or 2 that they could come back and share their wonderful experience with. And that thought is what mushroomed into a trip with 20 kids.
And could you just tell the people out there that were you trained to take a group like this on this type of bike ride?
No. No.
It was a lot of figuring it out on.
I think I just told you my story of getting out the bike and riding down the street a few blocks to make sure I could still ride one. No, I had a degree in secondary education, but I'd never actually taught other than a few days as a substitute when we were in the military. But I just felt comfortable in doing it, thought it wouldn't be a problem. And the reason I knew we could do it was because of the 2 or 3 months of training that I had taken them out on. I knew they'd sat through a lot of lectures and discussions, I should say, about getting ready and what the various, buying in a grocery store, foods and nutrition, money management, repairing, packing their pannier bags with plastic bags, to roll everything up and keep it all segregated so it wasn't messed up when you went in and were looking for one item on the bottom. It worked very well, and they were in good shape and they were all enthusiastic, and I thought, you know, we're ready to go. Let's do it. We did several good training runs, and then we did a shakedown trip through the San Juan Islands for, what was it, kids, 3 days or something?
3 or 4 days, yeah.
Nice.
And my husband was good enough to come with us on that trip, and our 10-year-old son too. And after that trip, I realized it was good for me to be going alone on this trip because it allowed me to put all my attention 100% on these kids instead of splitting my attention between me and another adult where we might chit chat or, you know, eat lunch together or whatever. It worked out really well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a perfect segue to the next question from Liam. He said, what was the training schedule?
We started out with short rides, I think, around the neighborhood, and these kids all had to get to my house from all over the city. Some of them had their parents bring them on the bike racks, but there were other kids that biked to my house. And then we'd start doing like rides around Mercer Island. What is that, Diane? 3 or 4 miles, 5 miles?
17 miles around, but we started in Seattle.
Yeah, we started from
Our first-
Seattle, that's right, which is another 5 or 6 miles at least from where we were. We had a lot of training, and these kids rode a lot to get ready. And even so, as Diane said, you know, our muscles really ached the first few days. We stretched at that starting point, even then. But it takes some good training to be able to get out and do a trip.
I had a hard leather saddle on a Peugeot, and I can't believe I took that trip with that hard leather saddle. It was not a comfortable saddle.
Well, we all had racing bike saddles is what you're talking about. And they were okay. It was hard, yes, but it would have chafed you even more if you'd had a broader saddle because your legs would have been pumping up and down against a little wider point on the saddle front.
All right. Moving on to Evelyn has another question. She's asking is, how is everyone's relationship with biking today? Do you still ride? And for what reasons?
Been there and done that. No, Ev, don't ride anymore. And I haven't ridden since the trip. I literally have not ridden my bike since the trip.
You rode on the reunion, Mom.
Oh, I did. Yeah, that's right.
40 years after the trip, she took a ride. Diane, I have an answer to that, but Diane, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I had mentioned before, I think this started, that my bike was stolen in my 20s and I didn't replace it. But I would love to get back into it. No, I'm not a rider now, but it's not because I don't like the sport. I think it's fabulous, and I think the time is right to try it out again.
Good for you.
I ended up going and working for a bike shop after this. When I think I was maybe 18 to 20, I the bike shops in Seattle, selling bikes and mostly selling accessories. And then I did some riding. And then I later, when I was in my 50s, did triathlons with part of it being bicycle. But also a lot of biking with my husband and my kids. So when I was after the bike trip, I felt like whenever I was depressed, I would get on my bike.
That's great.
That was one thing.
That's good to hear.
All right. I have a question here next from Maya. She says, hi to everyone. Did you write a book about this trip? Can't remember if this was mentioned or not.
You know, Linda mentioned originally, probably Diane too, that we ought to write a book about it. And I poo-pooed the idea at the time because I was worn out. But as we looked at it this week, and as I picked up the book again, my first thought was I should really write a book about this. So I think that may be in the works still.
I want to see a movie.
Okay.
A movie
Yeah,
would be.
slideshow.
We have another question here from Liam. Did you ride through Crater Lake, Oregon? If so, how was the experience?
Do you know Crater Lake is a little too far inland? We were in Oregon. There's no route one. There's no route one. We've got a real echo here. Bill, can you help us? Is anybody else hearing an echo?
Yeah, it's people should mute if they're not talking.
Okay, in Oregon, we had a different situation than in Washington and California. The highway goes inland quite a bit, and it was 101, but it did not go far enough inland to hit Crater Lake, which is really in eastern Washington, almost on the southern border of Oregon. That would have been beautiful. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, definitely. I guess this is my own personal question. Was there anything that any like rest stops or anywhere you stop that you would recommend everyone go check it out, whether they go bike to it, walk to it, however they get there, they need to go see this place?
Okay, all three of us think about that.
I want Big Sur is amazing. And Diane, you might explain, you did have a little accident there, right?
No. We didn't do Big Sur. That was on the northern coast of California, before San Francisco, that Diane's accident was.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was beautiful coming down the ocean coast.
So we didn't do Big Sur. I was thinking, okay, that was the part not spectacular. But we were coming down a huge mountain, and Diane had an accident.
Yeah.
I would just say that it wasn't just me. I mean, we had a few accidents on our way down. You know, it happens. One of our bikers was, I would say, gently sideswiped by a car. Thankfully, she wasn't hurt. I did kind of a crazy thing going down a hill. I reached back to grab something out of my pannier bag, and something caught in my spoke. So
your metal rod at the bottom of the pannier bag.
Yeah, so, you know, but yeah, I mean, there were definitely, and you saw Carol's wheel, there were definitely a few accidents that happened. We were really fortunate that none of them were really serious.
The only other thing that was a little scary was I had one young man, bicyclist in Los Angeles, stop breathing. And he spontaneously started up again by the time I got the word that we had a problem. But I did not realize, and no one had told me, that he was asthmatic. And we were in Los Angeles, and at the time it was a little bit more smoggy than it was for the rest of the trip.
Mm-hmm. I think we have another question here from Jenna, and it's a fun one. Who would you want to play you in the movie if the movie was made?
I have no idea.
Jenna,
I'll write to you and ask for a recommendation. How about that? Give us one right now, or you can start training to be the person.
I can't see any other ones. Sorry if I'm missing some of these questions. These are it's still very new to us. Emily, do you have any other questions?
Well, I don't think that we handled this one. How did the bike group come together, and did you have SAG support, and how many adults went on the trip? Some of that has been answered. Can one of you just recap that? This person mentioned that they joined the webinar late.
Yes. We did not have any sag wagon. Everything was carried on the back of the bike. We did not cook any meals on the trip, which is part of the answer to why we could carry things only on the bike. No cooking. It was summer. We were tired. We didn't want a big fuss over a meal. And we were very happy to eat out of the grocery store cold foods. And it worked out fine. I mean, a lot of sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly and bologna and salami and cheese and cereals for breakfast. I'll tell you one funny thing though. I had asked the kids to all have their breakfast be granola. And there were a couple of the boys that really liked Fruit Loops and Cheerios or a couple other cornflakes, and they poo-pooed the idea. And we started out on the trip, and after the first day or two, they acknowledged that they were switching over to granola because they couldn't keep up with the rest of the bikers. And you just have to remember, as horse owner, I grew up having my own horse. You always gave your horses oats if you wanted them to be able to be strong and go fast. Racehorses are fed a lot of oats. And I thought that's why these kids need granola, which is primarily oats. You need that extra energy. So if you're having trouble waking up in the morning and going to school, think about what your breakfast is.
Definitely.
So, yep.
Yeah, the food was pretty bland on that trip. I do remember we had a lot of what we call goober sandwiches. Do you remember that, Diane? It was like go into the grocery store and you could buy a thing of peanut butter with grape jelly swirled in it. And you just put the knife in. Do you know, right, Raymond, what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. They were still around in the 90s.
And we would just have goober sandwiches. I think we had like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches like for breakfast, lunch, dinner, like the whole trip. I don't remember really anything else other than cereal. Do you, Diane, remember what we ate?
We had crazy appetites. We were really hungry because we were working so hard. And
yeah,
I the very few times we went to McDonald's, you know, there'd be like contests of how many hamburgers or cheeseburgers a person could eat. And I think one boy got up to 12. I think my limit was 3 or 4, and I was pretty proud of myself. But it was, we just ate whatever, to be honest. And the faster you could get through a loaf of bread, the better, so you didn't have to carry it. So, you know, we would eat lots of sandwiches.
Yeah, and they did a really good job of sharing and splitting bread, mayonnaise, whatever else it was that they put on it, peanut butter, jelly. Bologna packages, you know, a whole package of bologna would go between several kids.
We had teams that we would have a team of 5 or whatever that would go into the store, right?
I didn't organize that. You kind of grouped up with friends, I think.
Well, it was the only way you could eat, Mom, because we had, I had cents for breakfast. So I have to like combine it with 4 other people's 50 cents. And
yep. And you did. That worked out really well.
Well,
and
on that note,
kids earned almost all their own money for this trip. We had car washes and bake sales. What else? Babysitting.
We earned $250 according to the article, each for like half the trip or something. And I just want to say before we close that that trip I consider the highlight of my life, and I've had a lot of really great experiences. But playing that trip I learned more in those 40 days. I just want to say thank you, Mom, for leading us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we definitely want to say thank you. This has been amazing. I love this story so much, and I feel like of any time in life, we needed a good news story. So I'm just really grateful for such a delightful afternoon. Linda, Diane, Ann, it's really been our pleasure to host you. We thank you for everyone who joined and were gracious and patient with us in getting used to this webinar layout. And thank you, Bill, for hosting us and for kind of allowing us to use this technology platform. But yeah, I think this is just a perfect story of why we love biking so much at Phoenix Bikes. It's a lot more than just bikes. It teaches you a lot of life skills and social skills and so much that benefits all of the rest of your life holistically. So thank you so much again, and thank you all for joining. And we are excited for this to be kind of launching a series of Saturday educational webinars. So join us again next Saturday. We are going to be, Raymond is going to be kind of walking through some myth busters about biking. So come if you want to learn some truths and some myths about biking, and we will put more of that information about that session on our social media channels, so you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But with that, we wish you all the best. Stay safe, and thank you again, Linda, Diane, and Anne.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.